Hi, it's Eileen Burns from Stress Coach Training, and today I'm going to talk about wealth or health. Why do we spend more money on a car than on our health? Now, for those of you who don't know me, I run an online stress management training school for therapists and coaches. I do different training. I do accredited relaxation training and online stress management training, and I also help, I train and I help therapists and coaches with their business. Now, I'm someone who 30 years ago started having severe, serious, chronic and rare health challenges, right, which impacted my life greatly. It impacted me so much that in my 20s, I had to spend a large part of that, what you would call as housebound and bedbound. In long periods of time, I had so much health challenges. And for me, I had a complex history, but I also probably in many ways had the wrong diagnosis. I was unlucky to get also be diagnosed with severe ME, which at the time by many doctors was regarded as all psychological or emotional. I had already a rare condition as a child. I had been bitten by something at 14 and had swollen legs, had been ill, but nobody knew what that was, and we didn't correlate it. And then I had kidney infections, all sorts of things. In my teenage years, and a lot of really kind of odd things. And then it wasn't till I was 19 and a dentist put mercury up a root canal, my health started to deteriorate. I had a very serious flu. And, one of the things what we're looking at when you look at COVID now, people are saying about how, we're looking at this as a kind of very serious virus. Well, what sometimes people don't realise is there's many flus that are very, very, and I was a young person, even though I had some health conditions, I was generally quite fit. I walked several miles a day. I actually had 2 jobs and I was singing in a band. So I had, I was still functioning, right, at a good level. And I went from someone like that, literally within a couple of days, to having such a severe flu, which I had violent shaking. I was so weak, my muscles were shaking. I think now, looking back, I started to realise it was probably also to do with the mercury. It was the mixture of me catching a virus while I had been basically mercury poisoned, right? Now, that wasn't just my only story. A lot of other things unfortunately happened to me that would really, how could you say, it's when you think about the balance of your health, it would put the scales were really put on pressure. Lots of other things happened that if you looked back, I need to write a book about this, but about the amount of things that happened that then were even putting more pressure on my health. It was a wonder that, it would explain why I had so many of the complications. But one of the things that I had to do very early on was spend money on my own health. And believe me, I was someone that didn't get proper benefits. Even when I was sick, there was a problem with I didn't have enough stamps because of an ex-employee and because I'd been a student, and there was a whole thing about me paying my fees and all that. It's a wee bit complicated, but basically when I was sick, I didn't get normal, even sickness benefit, and I didn't get the supplementary benefits that I should have got, even though I couldn't do really anything. I couldn't really walk. I was mostly, as I said, in bed at times. Even my young brother had to lift me to the toilet, which obviously is not, no one wants that kind of thing because I was so ill. Now, I learned through that the important about never undervaluing your health, and that I understood why so many of us do. I also could see very early on some of the, how could you say, I don't know if I would say gaps, but brokenness of the mainstream medicine. And even sometimes a little bit brokenness within holistic medicine as well, right? And that's, the one thing, but I also saw was even more importantly was how much people devalue their health and do not invest in their health. They make it the last thing, their last priority. And it was something that I've always seen and watched with clients. I even watch it with therapists, healers and coaches who will do anything to get to not, they'll spend as little on themselves. They may spend a lot of money on training, but actually going to get themselves treated and invest in themselves. There are certain ones, and and these are people that I'm very aligned with, but not everyone does that. And it's something that's really, really important. It's something I think should be explored and looked at. And it's sometimes when we look at this, it helps us understand our clients and why they do not invest. Why are they culturally, particularly in the UK, often the last to invest in their health? And as I say in this session, why do they spend more money on a car, on things, even clothes, shoes, bags, a house, all lots of material things, than health? So let's look at the value of our health and break it down. And the value of health does not, this is just some basic things. It obviously goes a lot more than this, but let's look. When we have health, we have more freedom and more choices. So when I was healthy, I could go out and go for a walk. I could go, and if I wanted to go and see my friends, I could go and see my friends whenever I do. I could do what I wanted. I could go on a bike. I could go and I could walk. I could run. I could decide that, oh, I want this. I want to do that. Oh, I think I'll go such and such. Oh, I want to go on holiday, right? Unfortunately, when you have a disease or even have a disability, believe me, a lot of those things become more difficult, or you just can't do them. It depends on the condition of the disease, right? Your freedom, yes, if we look at freedom in a different way, from a spiritual perspective, freedom is often freedom of how we view in the mind. And, that's a different thing, but what I'm talking about is a very practical level and a physical level, right? So you don't maybe have the choices that you had before. You can't, so you may have to do things a different way. It can be simple things as that you can't even wear the clothes that you used to wear because you can't button them up. Things like that people take for granted. There's so many things I could go into in so many different levels of different health challenges and disabilities. But the reality is health does give you that more freedom. It gives you more choice. It gives you energy, vitality, because you can do the things you want to do with ease, flexibility, okay? Health gives you that, you have energy when you wake up and you can go and do things, okay? Health gives you confidence because you know that you are physically able to do certain things, or you are more confident at being able to do things because you have a certain level of health and well-being. So your body, when you have a certain level of health and well-being, you take it for granted that your body's going to be able to do certain things, right? Your health helps you feel empowered because it helps you feel that you have power and that you can do things and you don't have to rely on someone else. And, now I'm not saying that health automatically makes you feel empowered. Often people's mental view of things will impact all that. But these are things that can and can't impact. Health can give you independence. It can give you, as I talked about, the things you can do. You can have independence and you don't have to rely on other people, okay? But the reality, disease is very much the opposite. The challenges of disease. Disease can reduce our freedom, our choices. Disease or even disability can reduce our freedom to go and do a walk. I loved to dance. When I was younger, I absolutely loved to dance. And at 19, I was the person that till 3 o'clock in the morning was dancing in the disco floor. And I went just from one day to a couple of days, going from then been able to do that, and then been so ill I could hardly move. And then even when I had some sort of recovery just in that initial stage before I get ill again, I never was able to move and physically do what I was able to do then. And believe me, that when you have that robbed from you, there's a great loss from that. Being able to have someone that was able to, be very flexible with my body, be able to do things, and then not. Okay? So, freedom of choice comes in all sorts of ways, and even choices in maybe careers, jobs, because again, you have something that's impacting freedom, even sometimes how much you need because of how you can't do it. You have to do it slightly different or do things in a different way. Okay? Disease can reduce our energy and vitality. When you have pain, when you have exhaustion, when you have things that are going on that maybe a condition that affects your sleep, all sorts of things, that can start reducing your energy levels, your vitality, because your body is in imbalance. Your body is often trying to balance itself constantly with the issue that's going on. And if the issue is not addressed, and you don't get to the root of the cause or the issue, or if it's been an injury that's not been healed properly, that's not been given support or whatever. One of the problems that I had the last 5-6 years was I had extreme noise sensitivity. It was triggering seizures. Now, it did seem I always had a bit of noise sensitivity, but this became like 20, 30, 40 times. I mean, it became then a seizure issue. It was triggering seizures, but I had injury, and I was left with no back teeth on one side because of a sepsis incident, and I was left with a problem with my jaw. Now, technically, I should have been given a graft, and I should probably have been given support and something there, but I wasn't, just to do with NHS. And the problems that I had was unbelievable. And other factors then were making things like I had to move house because of I couldn't cope with the level of noise where I was staying, because the noise level changed. I had to move to another house, and there was still slight noise issues, which was impacting my sleep. Now, these things impact. Lots of people will be able to recognise that. They have pain. They've maybe knocked their back out. They've done an injury. They've got a slipped disc, right? They've had a sports injury, okay? They've been in a car accident, okay? And what happens, they have pain which it impacts their sleep, or if there's something in it that's not been able to be fixed. I had a friend who smashed a large part of her shoulder in pieces, and they had all sorts of problems trying to put that together. Now, fortunately, I sent her to someone who was able to, a healer was able to do things that most the surgeons just couldn't do. But she had horrendous pain, which caused her so many problems, other ways. So, disease, and even disease in the mind and emotion, can impact us in many ways and reduce, as I said, our vitality, our energy, our chi in our body, which again can cause then, if that's not addressed, cause other chi problems in the body. Disease can reduce our confidence, self-esteem and mental health. Now, it can do that for a variety of reasons. It can do because we can't do what we used to be able to do. We don't know how to adapt. We maybe don't have the skills to know how to adapt. We may not have the support to adapt, or even the support to be able to function in society. One of the biggest challenges that I had from a very young age when I was diagnosed with what they classed as severe ME. One of the main problems was that most doctors were given the wrong information and didn't have proper science about it and believed it was all in the head, right? So I had a huge problem. I was collapsing all the time. I couldn't function, and I sometimes couldn't even hold a cup. And, and would sleep. I would sleep on average 20 hours a day at certain stages, particularly in the initial stages when I had to come back home and stay with my parents because I couldn't function. And even just trying to lift my head sometimes off the pillow felt like I was trying to lift honest to God, it was like as if it was a boulder. I was trying to big stones, right? My body was so heavy. And the reality was, at that point I didn't realise that also my body wasn't getting into different realms of sleep. It wasn't getting into repair. And I didn't know till probably 5-6 years ago, it looks as if it was definitely, I had Lyme's disease and co-infections that would have caused lots of complications. So what basically was, I did have severe ME, but I also had other reasons why I had that. And I had been mercury poisoned, and nobody would know how to deal with that, particularly when it was up a tooth. I had also, all sorts of things. And then I was someone that had threatened eye loss and very young. And again, basically I saw hundreds of doctors for all these things, and most of them couldn't do anything. Or they wanted me to do things that actually caused me. And one was, I can't remember how they call it. They didn't call it pacing then. But I did this programme and it actually had a huge knock, and it made me go even worse for 2 years, right? So the problem is that I didn't have enough confidence and self-esteem at that time and energy and vitality to fight against the doctors and say you're wrong, right? So a lot of people can have that. The problem also as well is that when people have diseases or conditions, sometimes they have no choices in many ways. They are told that this is what they've got to take and this is what they do, or there's nothing. And sometimes they're in a very difficult situation, and then the things that they're given can cause them other complications. I was a wee bit more switched on. I knew, and I had ways of getting, even when most people didn't have the internet, I had new ways that I could get the information and what I needed. And I wasn't just a pill popper. I never just took what the doctors, I did my research and weighed up the pros and cons, and how glad I am, because some of the things that they were going to give me early on, oh my goodness, because when I, found out later on really what my conditions were, they would have been really dangerous for me, right? So when someone has a disease, unfortunately, sometimes they have a battle on their hands, and also a battle on their hand with their family and friends, because their family and friends can take time to adjust. They may not understand their condition. They're coming to terms with the grief, and they've got all these other issues, and sometimes society doesn't cater for the disability of their disease, and they have the problem, things like, unfortunately, UK, you've got a horrendous benefit system that no matter how serious someone's condition is, it can be a huge fight getting any income that they should be entitled to, right? So disease can take away all that, and it can take away your power and your control, your ability just to be a human being and be respected and valued. It can do all sorts of things. It can take over it, because if you are not able to function, think about when you're so ill that you're taken in hospital. Your power in many ways is taken over. You're actually giving your power over to the nurses and doctors, even though you don't want to. You're having to rely on someone else. And often, they don't always make the right decision for people. So, unfortunately, when you're ill, and one of the things I've, many experiences that way, you've had to rely on other people. And some people around about you don't have a clue what they're doing, and they don't always do what's right. So when someone's got a disease, they're almost having to give their power over to sometimes, it depends on the illness. But unfortunately, they're having to rely on other people around about them who may not have basic skills to be able to support them and care for them. So there's lots of things can happen. And disease can take, at the core, one of the things that most people struggle about in a disease is if it takes away their independence, or it takes away the things that were important to them, right? So these are all things that we take for granted, that all these negative things, until it happens to us, right? But the reality is, we live in a society that where we haven't really learned to value our health until it's too late, right? And we're not taught to, right? And We also in the UK, I believe, because we have a national health service and we're not like a lot of other countries where we have to pay for our health services, we don't always look after our health and we don't invest. And it's one of the things that makes me think about this statement that someone said to me many, many years ago. And it was a guy who taught me that I went to for the Alexander technique for a year. This guy helped me go from someone who struggled to walk and had huge stamina issues, right? And mobility issues, that struggled to walk even 10, 20, well, it wasn't even, I think it's about 5 yards I struggled to walk at that time. He taught me how to use my muscles in a different way. But he said something to me. Why do we spend so much money on our car and spend so little on our bed? And this is just one of the things that we do as a society. And I'm going to talk about this a wee bit and relate it to what I'm talking about. So, the average, I've looked this up, and the average monthly payment of a car in the UK is approximately £226. An average person will pay a month for a car in the UK, okay? Well, that's they're paying it up or whatever, right? But the average cost for £1,000 bed, now this is if you invested in £1,000 bed, the average cost in relation to a £1,000 bed is required, would say that how long it'll last, of good quality and whatever, works out only £6 a month, right? Now, many people don't even use their car an hour a day, right? And I'm not saying everyone, but many people have a car that sits in their drive, and technically they only use it about an hour a day, maybe half an hour going to their work, half an hour coming back, or a little to the shops or here and there, right? And spend £226 a month on that car, right? But the bed, they spend how many hours a night in bed? So if you're supposed to, if you're getting a good night's sleep or doing what you're supposed to, 8 hours, say 8 hours, okay, I know everyone's slightly different, but say 8 hours, even if it was only 6 hours. And £1,000 bed costs you £6. But most people don't invest £1,000 a bed, or if they do, they drag it out for years and years and, the bed's ready to be falling apart. They make it a very, very low priority, right? And we live in a culture where we spend money on things. We spend money on our house. We spend money in our car, or a new chair, or a new sofa, or, clothes, handbags, nights out, meals. But how little do we invest in our health? Now, as someone who was on the poverty line most of my life, I was, no matter, I was spent large parts in the poverty line, and I'll explain why. One was, even when I was very sick, I didn't get the benefits. And most of what I had to invest just to be able to function, because I wasn't getting any help, right? So, luckily for me, I'm very good with my money. I was brought up in a family business background, but I was always brought up in a background of 9 children. So I was brought up to really be wise with my money, know how to budget well, and know how to be resourceful, and thank God I did. But there was also many times where I would sit heartbroken, where I couldn't afford, because I'd spent so much money, every penny I had, and then maybe something came along that would appear could really help me. But I had spent so much money, or my parents had spent so much money, I was thinking. And you're thinking, there's no way I can ask them for that money. They have done everything they can, right? I remember in a situation at one time with my eye, I was spending £60 a month in collagen, and I was living off £60 a week. And that was to pay all my bills and my food. And the collagen that I needed for my eye to keep my eye healthy was £60 a month, and I couldn't afford it, and I broke my heart, right? But on the other hand, I had spent thousands and thousands and thousands on people to help, and yeah, some helped, Some was a complete waste of money just because they thought they could help, but they didn't have proof or evidence they could help. They hadn't really had the experience of dealing with someone with me. So it's one of the reasons why, even in the other side of my business, I'm always, I think it's really important that people know what they can help and what they can, and they're honest when they're working, but that's another topic. But why do we not value our health? Why, as a society, do people quibble when they have to go and pay someone to support their health? Often people that have spent decades or years training, spent thousands of pounds to learn, to treat, but why do people? I get a lot of people who are always wanting the freebies, okay? And I've got better at it. I don't get as much now, but even people that kind of know me or friends at one point, and they contact you and they're almost assuming that they're going to get that freebie and they want something free. And a lot of them are in huge, a lot healthier positions than what I'm in many ways, because I'm still having to spend lots of money out privately for my health and for things that I can't get on the National Health Service, okay, to support my health. And that, that's not the issue. But the reality is, why do people struggle psychologically, mentally, emotionally, to, how could you say, believe that they're worthy, that their health and well-being is worth that amount of money? Now, I think there's a lot of things goes on. We know it's lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth. Often people want to have things, or be seen to have certain things, or feel as if they've got financial security. But the reality is, your health is in many ways more important, because once your health starts to deteriorate, very hard to enjoy any of these things, and it may be even hard to have them anymore. Okay, so it's something that needs to be addressed. But also, it's not just about self-esteem, self-worth, and it's about people not being aware how much their health's important. It's just even the way that they're conditioned to believe that material things, busyness, and all these other things are going to give you happiness, right? And of course, just getting your health back, someone can get their health back, but they're still not happy. Yeah, that's to do with your attitude. I'm someone that has lots of challenges, and and I've actually cured myself in many ways, or helped heal myself of many things that I was told I wouldn't. I managed to get my eye pressure up myself without any mainstream medicine. I was able to do certain things. I've been told that I needed certain operations, and I never needed to get them done because of certain things. And then there's some things that I've not managed to completely eliminate myself from. But the reality is, I live as a positive, and healthy mental life as I can, and that's to do with attitude. But I cannot deny that all these things in that disease and dysfunction of health does not impact life. Of course, would I wish anyone else to have the life that I've had? No, I certainly wouldn't, and that's why I'm creating this video. But if you're someone who struggles, who has no problem buying a designer bag, or your designer shoes, or that nice car, even though you could go for a lower budget car, right? And you could be doing with, say for example, that physio, that osteopath session, get your back sorted, your anxiety sorted, your stress sorted, whatever aspect of your health needs sorted, and you're not investing, saying, oh no, I'm not investing in that. You have to ask yourself, why? What's going on? Do you really value all those things more important than you and than your health and well-being? Why have we got such a distorted perception of what something is worth? I find it interesting when people say, oh my goodness, or that's expensive, or I wouldn't invest in that, spending that in my health or whatever. Obviously for me money, I was going to say the money, when it comes to your health, money shouldn't be an issue, but it is an issue. Of course it is, because it depends on where you're going to get your money and if you've got the money. Of course it is. Of course it is. I know that. I know that too well. On many occasions, I just couldn't afford the things that I wanted, right? But the reality, there's a big difference. There is a big difference in relation to what we prioritise in and just about even how we prioritise our life and our lifestyle. And this session is just about the basics, about trying to get you to become more aware of your spending habits, your health habits, and about maybe you asking yourself, why are you not investing more in your health? Why is your health coming last in your list? Why do you make all these other things a priority? I believe the media has a lot to do with it. I think advertising and marketing has really hypnotised people into certain behaviour patterns. I found it interesting, even with COVID-19, of how so many people have not even thought about taking as much self-responsibility to support their health, to support their immune system. I found it even more really worrying and concerning that the NHS hasn't supported people to do more things to support their immune system, to help them. That really worries me, because that really kind of, to me, suggests that the National Health Service is not about health promotion, really, about promoting health well-being. It seems to be more like emergency management or symptom management, and that's a whole other issue. But I would like you to just think about, and this is just for your own, this is to help you. I want you to think about, what do you spend in a car? What do you spend in your house? What do you spend in things? What things do you physically own? And then if you have a health challenge, okay, how little do you spend on your health and well-being in a week? How much do you invest in that? And again, even if you're someone who wants to get into therapy, coaching or healing industry, we're seeing a huge influx and very fast-track training, which unfortunately most people do not know the difference between a quality course. Just because it says certificate, diploma now, unfortunately today, doesn't mean anything. Sadly, that's the problem. And they don't know the difference between a lot of standardisation and things. And sometimes I get people, and I do laugh, and they'll say, that seems like an expensive course. It's clearly often people that have never spent a penny in their education or had to spend on training, and doesn't know the difference between a quality course or a course that's not really got any content, or knows anything about, this sort of work. And also what I always have to consider as well is, do they realise that when they learn that, then what they can make, if they're doing that, that's what, it's like, you spend £500 or £600 in a course. That is minuscule if that's going to make you money. I mean, if you think about how much money you can start making if you apply it, you have to be able, obviously, we can learn any training as a therapist, but you still have to apply business skills and marketing skills. But if you then make money from that, is it expensive? Of course it's not. That is an investment. And even if you spend £10,000, £20,000 on a course, if that is going to make you money, it's an investment. Your health is your investment. And we have to be able to look at this, because this is something that's not really talked about, but it's so important. And it's just because sometimes people's awareness, they're just doing their everyday thing, and they're conned in a way by the modern way of life. They're conned by society that material things are more important than their health, well-being, happiness. My priority may not be your priority. Of course, we all have different priorities, but we still have to be willing to challenge. We cannot sit and complain about our health if we're not willing to do anything about it. Okay? And I believe we all need to be making more we need to be making more choices. We should be taking more responsibility for our health, because our health is our wealth, right? And our health should be our biggest priority.